My name is Trip Gorman, and in this episode of Semilla VC, I sat down with Piero Nunez de Risco, who spent 12 years at Dominican Financial Services giant Grupo Universal before joining Scotiabank as their head of digital banking for the Caribbean, Central America, and Uruguay. Piero was also previously vice president of the board at the Dominican Financial Technology Association before founding Pana, where he's seeking to revolutionize personal finance and remittance sending for the 62 million Latinos living in the United States. We discussed Pana's nerve-wracking process of being admitted into Y Combinator, how venture capital and tech has developed in the Dominican Republic over the past 5 to 10 years, and how Web3 will play a role in the future of remittance sending. We also discussed why the Caribbean is often overlooked by VCs, but how it is now poised to grow. Learn about all this and more in this episode of Semilla VC. Could you start by telling the audience a little bit more about your work history up to and including founding Pana?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm happy to be here. So I was born in a artistic family, if you want to put it some way. My dad and a couple of uncles and cousins and stuff are in the media industry. My dad was a TV host and presenter, for most of all of his life, basically. So it was kind of like expected that we all would follow kind of like a path on TV and stuff. So the truth is, speaking in public, getting out there, getting the message out, was not that hard for me, nor for most of my family members. But I knew I loved business. I loved business. I wanted to do something big. I felt I had a huge mission. I always felt I had this big desire to do something big. And sometimes you ask yourself, is that just like your ego talking, or do you really have that? And that's kind of like one of those challenges that we can talk about in a second. But anyway, I felt the need to, if I want to do that, if I want to do something big, and if I want to do a big business, I gotta prepare for that. So I gotta go and do the 101 and walk the full path and just prepping, not just going to school, learning everything I need to learn, and I wanted to work for companies that really provided me exactly that type of boot camp experience, so that eventually I could have my own big number one company in the world. And every step of the way I took was kind of like in the path towards that. One of those learnings was building a thicker skin, which is like one of the things since I'm a dreamer, I'm emotional. I always said, well, if I'm on a board after an IPO, I'm gonna have to deal with a lot of strong stuff. So I gotta get maybe a thicker skin as well. So anyway, I started my journey with that in mind. I need to learn that things that are more on the technical side, on the business side. How do you run a business? What do you do? How do you do it? How do you manage teams? How do you hire? All that. So I started working at Banco Popular. It's kind of like the biggest private bank in the Dominican Republic. Amazing boot camp type of experience where I learned a lot. Then I went on to Grupo Universal, which it was kind of like a parent company at that time. And I first started in internet banking, and not just in internet banking, but in customer support and internet banking. Then I went up the ladder on many roles in commercial and business development and sales and whatnot. So I start building this, framework or platform out of which I can actually, grow and learn and eventually have that, my own company. On the personal side, that also had a huge effect on what type of life I wanted. I knew I wanted a type of life like a home, a wife, kids, etc. So I think everything kind of like started stirring, and then I eventually had my first startup. I learned a lot, successes and failures. Then I had couple of other great jobs. I went to, I went up the ladder and corporate ladder and got promotions and stuff. And then I was hired by Scotiabank to lead its digital factory, which I know we'll talk about in a second. But there was this one point where I was not expecting it, but my opportunity, the opportunity of my lifetime, came in, and I had to take it. And it's a feeling I cannot describe, but I had to take that chance. And I feel that the drive and energy behind Pana is exactly that. It's exactly something that has been stirring for centuries, for like my lifetime. That's how I feel, right? So anyway, we're here, and I feel I've been preparing for this all my life.
Could you please tell the audience a bit more about your time as head of digital banking for the Caribbean, Central America, and Uruguay at Scotiabank Digital Factory?
It was an amazing experience. It was not what I was looking for at the moment, but it was exactly what I needed at the moment. Scotiabank reached out and said, we need a head of digital banking for 11 countries, 11 plus countries, um, to help us lead the digital factory, which is the place out of which digital banking team operates. And so I basically hired, grew, and led a team of 130 plus engineers, designers, product, analytics, you name it. So what we did was, we just basically created the full experience from beginning to end, from front to back, and we built the digital banking tools completely: internet banking, mobile, web, etc. So we had to build that great experience, and we had to do it through the pandemic, which is an amazing experience as well. So completely remote, 130 plus people, just creating and building amazing digital banking tools.
Could you tell the audience a bit more about your role as head of retail and corporate wealth management at Grupo Universal?
Yes, just like the previous experience, I have had amazing. I've been amazingly lucky to be able to build great teams, and to be part of great teams. Um, at AF Universal, I was the director for the commercial team. We basically it was a startup within a huge holding group. It was this new division, this asset management wing, and we basically hired, grew, and led the commercial team just to go out there, get customers to start trusting, investing, and putting their pesos into these mutual funds that we manage. The best thing we achieved was not just the amount we raised, the amazing team we shaped and formed, which is still there. But I think the best was helping Dominican savers achieve their dreams and goals through our saving products. I think that obviously was an amazing experience, and one that I'll keep close to my heart.
How has the Dominican Republic's venture capital and technology ecosystem changed over the past 5, 10 to 15 years?
Chirp, while it's still in its infancy, in terms of capital and framework, I think it has come a long way, especially in terms of awareness. So, just a couple of years ago, you spoke about venture capital, and that was crazy. I think it was, people went as far as a loan, and just a DCF, and valuation based on cash flow, and that's that. I mean, I remember when I started pitching my first investors back in 2010 ish. Honestly, I a lot of them were like, wealthy dentists, that, they just said like, so when do I get my money back? And I was like, how can I kind of like explain two things, not just explain this, but do my business. So, but now they're, angel investor networks. They're actually private funds. So it's taking shape. I think the Dominican Republic is one of those very promising space, countries in the near future. In fact, I can tell you now that there are more investors and there's more money than there is projects. So I will encourage, any one of your listeners who would like to start up a company, and they could do it remotely, and or they could do it for the Dominican market, to do it. I think there's a huge and beautiful opportunity to start there.
Is the Dominican Republic paving the way for Caribbean venture capital and technology as a whole, or how does your country fit into that larger puzzle piece of the whole Caribbean region?
That's a great question. The country is hungry, the country is growing, and yes, it has all the intentions to start building that. And in fact, I have been in conversations with big investors of putting in a lot of their capital into new companies. And the truth is, the amount that one of them could invest, there's no company that needs that much money. So we need to start working on developing that ecosystem where really entrepreneurs can thrive, can actually thrive and have access to that capital, but just start building companies, right? I think it's in a great moment in time, and yes, there is an obstacle, of course, which is the market is not so big. So I think the caveat here is, what are the things that entrepreneurs can work on that would be scalable internationally? I think that's the sweet spot there. Because if you focus on the Dominican market, it might be too small for some startups. But if you think about DR being your staging area, I think it's an amazing opportunity.
What unique insights can you share stemming from your time as vice president of the board of directors of the Dominican Association of Fintechs?
Yeah, number one, that there's so much talent in the Dominican Republic in terms of financial technology. There's a lot of hunger and a lot of drive to just build better financial products, and that there are more people who want to build financial products than you might think of. It was an amazing experience in the way that we all got together, created an association. We basically were the founders of the association. Now it has hundreds of members, and I think it's now serving as the platform for young entrepreneurs or existing fintechs that would like to scale and take things seriously. So it's a great opportunity in the Dominican Republic right now, because you have a lot of half of the population underserved, and there's a lot of drive to create better products and services for them.
Let's switch gears now and talk a little bit more about Pana. Could you tell the audience why you created it, more about it? Give us that whole arc and story there.
Yeah, so Pana is a challenger bank. You can also call it a digital bank, a neobank. It's a fintech for the 62 million Latinos living in the U.S. Customers can open an account without a social security number, or with it. They can send money home without fees on these remittances, up to $300. And they can borrow and lend from each other within the app in social group chats. The insight came when I was through my time as head of digital banking at Scotiabank. I saw the power of building great banking product at scale. And one of those trips, I was once visiting family members in the U.S., and I went to open an account. And to my surprise, I could not open an account online because I did not have an SSN back then. I was like, oh, that's weird. So I went to a branch, and it was a 1996-ish experience. I sat on a wooden desk and a lot of papers, and this guy didn't even look like he wanted to open an account or serve me. I never got his name clearly. I got an ATM card, not even a debit card. So you put your money in and you have no idea what to do with it. So then I tried to get a hold of this officer later on for a transfer, nowhere near. So it's a horrible experience. And it turns out I suddenly realized that I was not alone in this. There are 12 million people in the US who do not have an SSN. A lot of recent migrants just coming into the US in their process of getting their SSN or their work visa or whatever. And you know, we also realize that even if you do have an SSN or a banking relationship, um, financial services for Latinos is really cumbersome. It's really expensive. Sending money back home, it's incredibly tough in 2022. So we said, listen, I think it's time so that Latinos, which is the fastest growing minority in the US, with a $1.7 trillion buying power, does not feel like a second class citizen anymore. So we knew that this was the time, this was the opportunity, and we have a team that has done that before, and that could definitely do it at a larger scale in the US. So that's how Pana started. We have literally lived through the experiences of migrating, of renting a house, of buying a car, or opening a bank account, sending money home, whatnot. So that's how it came to happen. And apparently, everything indicates that we're on the right track. We joined the Visa Fast Track program. We were accepted into Y Combinator. We're now almost ending the batch. So anyway, that's how it came to be.
You mentioned Y Combinator. How was that process of both getting into and going through Y Combinator with Pana?
I had I've been dreaming of getting into YC for a long time, and that's the truth. And that's the truth for so many people out there, although they'll not say it. I had applied for YC. I had gotten a decline, and those that hurtful email that says, unfortunately. Um, so, but with Pana, that was with previous startups. But with Pana, when me and my co-founder Luis got to talk, and I had this initial insight and idea, and then I talked to him, and we together we gave life to it. It came to life like based on discussions from both of us, and I once said, man, I think this could we could get into YC with this, because I think we're onto something. And a couple of weeks passed, and then suddenly the opening for YC came in. Like, you can now apply for the batch, for the summer 22 batch. We applied. We carefully applied. I once got that email, and it says, we want to interview you. That was an amazing moment. Then we had that interview. 10 minutes felt like 2 seconds, but it was amazing. It was just like you read on blogs around about it everywhere. An amazing interview, one of which we went out just feeling strong, but at the same time, you're not sure. So you're like, I think we did it well, but did we? So we finished the interview, and you kind of like get a call or get an email. An email if you got rejected, or a call if you got accepted. And we got, hours passed by. It was horrible because, you're just waiting and you're anxious. And we suddenly got an email. I'm like, what? And then the email basically said, we have some follow-up questions. So we did answer them, like a 24-hour turnaround. And then we, a couple of days later, got a call, and maybe one of the happiest moments in my professional career.
Wow. And congratulations. Moving on to talking more about remittances as a whole. What would the average American not know about sending remittances abroad?
Remittances, um, and I'm gonna quote my dad on this. Love is felt more in the distance. And every Dominican, Mexican, Colombian, Peruvian who have migrated to the US for a better life, every time they send money back home, it's an act of love. So a lot of people just see a number. Many others see an act of love, an act of caring, um, a family thing. So I think that's maybe one of the biggest insights around remittance. Um, and yeah, and Dominican Republic is one of those countries who receive a lot of remittance every year.
How will Web3 play a role in the future of remittances?
It's a very interesting question. I think the technology is very promising. It is in its early days, so I think we need to start seeing how it pans out. I think we need to divide the conversation in two. One thing is if a coin is worth or not, if if a coin is worth investing on it on and that if its value is gonna grow or not. I think that's one type of conversation. There's another conversation around technology. I think we need to focus on the technology. How good is it? Um, Again, because we're on its early days, you might find it challenging to, create a network, an infrastructure that can actually replace what there is right now in terms of payment networks, the last mile. One thing is to buy an asset in the US and sell it in the DR. But how is that going to work for someone underbanked in Elias Piñas, Dominican Republic, to receive their remittance in cash in their front door? How do you do that? You need an infrastructure, right? So, sometimes we compare the best of one thing with the worst of another, and maybe that kind of like has been dominating the conversation today nowadays. But I think there's a huge opportunity for remittance with Web3 and with all this new technology, but we need to have a clear understanding on what, when, and how. And again, I think we're on its early days right now, but it's definitely promising.
Would you tell the audience about an unexpected challenge you faced starting Pana and how you overcame that challenge?
Uh, yes, I think I one day I was actually kind of like surprised that since day one everything was going super smooth, and I was like, where is it? Where is it? When you start something, there's always and it's like Darwin's theory. I was like, oh man, I shouldn't have asked that question so much because one day it came. And I can't get a lot into details, but there was this hiccup or basically obstacle in the infrastructure. Like when you try to build a neobank, in our case, you got to put a lot of pieces together, like the full stack from the front end to all the way to the back end and the bank score and the satellites and the peripherals and the network of cash in, cash out, the processor, you know whatever, you're putting together a lot of stuff, right? So we had an obstacle one of those days, and it was like a week away from launching. So we had basically it represented a potential delay of 60 days. We were going to be dead in the water. And the truth is, the first thing I did was, well, feel horrible, stress out. But I had to realize that we had to find a way. If I kept crying, I would just simply, probably be dead from a company perspective. But we obviously, I called my co-founder. I said, listen, let's deal with it, and let's first try to find a solution, and then um, share it with the team, and then let's start to execute it. And one of the things you kind of like have to do at those moments is maybe limit uh, how much information you are sharing um, outside the inner circle at that moment, because you know you might get part of the team a little bit down with the news and stressed without need. So anyway, we worked around it, we figured it out. Then we got together as a full team and we found a solution. And we took those 60 days down to 7. So it was amazing, really amazing opportunity.
Wow, amazing indeed. So finally, I have to ask Peter Thiel's famous contrarian question, but with a uniquely Semilla VC twist. What important truth about the Dominican Republic or Latin America do very few people agree with you on?
A couple of days ago, I told my co-founder that um, I said, listen, I think we have a good chance of creating a beautiful story and having a wonderful impact for millions of people who right now don't have maybe proper financial products or services in the US. But you know what? One of those insights that I think we could send out, it's a message to the Latino diaspora worldwide, is that you can make great businesses, good, you know, ethical, honest, responsible business and thrive. That could be maybe the best message. And the reason why I tell you this context is because I really truly believe that the challenges that we're born with as Latin Americans, you know, give us, you know, a much more stronger prep and boot camp and DNA and resiliency and resourcefulness. That if we were to add the other components of studying, being respectful, being responsible, and and just learning how to play the game, I think we actually have an edge in the competitive landscape of the world. So basically, I think Latinos today are underestimated, and much of that is because we have yet to do a lot of work in learning, preparing ourselves, and getting better and better and better. But when we do, I think as a region and as a community and as a family, I think we have a huge potential to do great things in the world.
Well, Piero, thank you so much for coming on the Semilla VC podcast today. I very much appreciate it.
It was my absolute pleasure.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Semilla VC podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe wherever you view your podcasts. Also subscribe to Semilla VC's Deal Flow LA newsletter, which can be found by going to dealflow.la.